A very good day to all of our viewers. Welcome to another Let's Talk. We're delighted to be with you on the airways of Second Advent Radio and through our various social media platforms. We are continuing our discussion today with Dr. Douglas Street. We are talking about wellness basics, and we want today specifically to go into the area of inflammation, a very important subject. So please sit up, listen up. In fact, pick up your phone, call your neighbor, call your friend, let them know that Let's Talk is on, and that today's topic is one that they can ill afford to miss. Before we go into our discourse for today, we invite you to have a word of prayer with us. Eternal Father and our God, we thank you for the opportunity and privilege to share on another Let's Talk. We ask for your wisdom, your grace, and your guidance. Be with our guest, Dr. Street. We pray that you will give him wisdom and grant that as he shares, that the information will prove meaningful. Guide us again in our deliberations. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, Dr. Street, good day. Welcome to Let's Talk again. We were with you last week, and it was a very insightful discussion. We are talking today on a subject that is very important. I know you wrote about this in your book, and I want to say up front that we're not going to be able to cover all the information in one session, so there's going to be a part 3. But welcome, Dr. Street. Good day and welcome again.
Thank you, Pastor, and good day to your listeners and viewers.
Well, we want to get right into the discussion, and I want to begin today by asking you, we are focusing on inflammation. Now, I want to say up front that my understanding of inflammation is that it is the body's response to injury or infection. But I often hear doctors prescribing medication either to reduce inflammation or to clear it. Now, if that is correct, why is it then that it is necessary to fight inflammation if it is the body's natural response to clear infection? So maybe you can guide us on what inflammation is and why the challenge in my mind.
Okay, thank you, Pastor. So let me first of all be a little bit clearer when it comes on to what inflammation is. So inflammation, yes, it's the body's response to injury, to infections, and it's an important part of our bodies being able to maintain stability in of itself and safety. However, there are substances. Inflammation is like warfare, so to speak. And if you should have it's a war breaking out in Antigua, let us say there's an invasion. It is very necessary for the security forces to respond to it. But in the process of responding, there's going to be collateral damage. And that is really the problem. There's going to be collateral damage. One, there's going to be damage to infrastructure, right? So buildings are going to be destroyed. Persons are going to be killed, of course. And there's going to be an impact on the function of the society in that area. People are not going to be able to go to work. They're not going to be able to do maintenance stuff, repairs and all that. But that is going to have to be put aside. And that is really where the inflammation causes a problem, because inflammation, it can cause damage to your body, So for example, you have different types of inflammation. You have acute and chronic inflammation. Acute inflammation is short-term, which is what you get with a case where they have an injury. Like you have a cut, for example, or it could be blunt trauma as well. So what happens is that the blood vessels dilate, extra blood gets in to mop up the damage, remove the damage, and then do the repairs. Or in the case of an infection, the body produces harmful substances that kill the bacteria, but these harmful substances also have an effect on the body as well. They have a negative effect on the body. So you have symptoms of inflammation that can result. There can be a local inflammation, For example, if you get a cut or infected area, or it can be systemic. So it can be a localized inflammation, or it can be systemic. Systemic is all over your body. Of course, if it is all over your body, it's going to have a greater impact on you, right? You have also different levels. So you have high-grade inflammation, which you may get with a severe infection, like you have a pneumonia. Pneumonia will trigger a severe systemic inflammation and can affect different parts of the body, even though it's actually an infected lung. You also have chronic inflammation, which is long term, so it goes on for a long time. And it may be the inflammation that we usually have more concern about is the chronic low-grade systemic inflammation, which can result from many different things. It can result from a bad diet. It can result from not enough rest, not drinking enough water, chemicals getting into your system. And usually when you have low-grade inflammation, it goes on more or less it's not really obvious that is going on. And it may be causing damage under the quiet. It's like you have a piece of furniture that is infested by termites. So you don't see anything much happening, but inside damage is taking place. And after a while, that chair is going to fall apart when you try to sit on it. And that's what happens with inflammation. Over time, it breaks down on your body and it causes damage. Now, it's also important to understand that the body has a capacity to repair the damage that is caused by inflammation, damage and interference. So inflammation causes a number of things. It can cause damage, as I said. It can cause interference with the body functions. And in the case of hormonal function, it may interfere with hormonal function. And that may result in many different things. For example, diabetes, right? In diabetes, the inflammation affects the action of the insulin. So insulin does not work properly. So it causes the blood sugar levels to go up. It also can cause hypertension. Same thing. The hormones that control your blood pressure don't work properly. So the blood pressure is not controllable. The blood pressure goes up. It also can affect reproductive functions. It can affect, because most of the functions in the body are controlled by hormones, either systemic hormones or localized hormones. So when you have a situation where the hormones are being interfered with, then they don't function properly, and then that system is not going to function the way it should. It also affects the healing process, right? It interferes with the healing process and can also cause the healing process to go haywire. An example of that is keloids, right? You have keloids. And in case of keloids, you have a situation where inflammation is affecting the healing process, causing it to become abnormal. And of course, this can result in keloids. So the reason why it's so important to control inflammation is because of this damage that it causes. Now, the problem with the medication that are used to control inflammation is that they don't have a healthy impact on the inflammation that is inside your body, right? So we normally use the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories or the steroids or steroid medications. This thing about this non-steroidal anti-inflammatories is that they can cause damage to different parts of the body, and they actually can be counterproductive because they actually, even though the name says non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, they can actually cause changes that can increase the inflammation inside the body. And that is very important to note. And the reason why they do that is because the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories can trigger a change in your intestines, in your colon, changing the mixture of bacteria there, which can promote inflammation inside your body, right? They also can affect the kidneys. They can send up your blood pressure. They can affect the stomach. They can affect the heart. So they're really not medication that you really want to be using for too long. They can send up your blood pressure, as I said. So for persons who are hypertensive, it's normally recommended that they try to avoid taking non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. That's something I want persons to know. Persons who are hypertensive, they should not really be taking non-steroidal anti-inflammatories for any long. They should try avoid it first of all. If they take it, then it should be for a short period of time. And The steroids now, what they do is that they cause a wholesale suppression of the immune system. So they suppress not only the bad functions of the immune system, but also the good functions. So a person on steroids is more likely to get infections, for example, because the infection fighting ability of the immune system is going to be suppressed when you're on a steroid, which is why we usually try to keep the course as short as possible. And the other thing that they can do is that they can actually send up your blood pressure. They can send up your blood sugar. They can cause retention of fluid inside of your body. And they can cause damage to the skin as well, causing things like stretch marks and so on. So again, these are not medications that we really want to be using for a long time. So medication is not really the best way to try to reduce inflammation inside the body. There are more healthier ways of doing that. Not hearing a pastor.
You have said
Right.
so much there,
Yes.
and I want to ask you a few questions on
Sure.
what you have shared. Very important. I intended to ask you, how relevant is this discussion on inflammation? I mean, you have partially answered it already, because I mean, we see that it can create quite a lot. What I'm not sure I got, though, in your response is specifically, what is inflammation?
Okay.
If you can, I don't know if I should say define it. What is it?
Mhm.
And why is it? I mean, it seems to be good and bad, because if it's a part of the defense mechanism of the body, but excess can create damages. So what is it, and how does it function?
Okay, so inflammation is really as you had mentioned, it is a response to either injury, it's a response of the immune system, particularly, not exclusively, especially the immune system, to injury or infection. So when you have an infection, you have a foreign body that has invaded a particular area in your body. And what happens is that the parts of the immune system will detect this foreign body, this bacteria or virus, and they have a system where they activate the immune response, and then there's more blood flowing to that area. So there's an increase in your blood flow, and there's also increased number of white blood cells that go into the area. And these white blood cells will directly attack this bacteria. They'll also produce substances we call antibodies that will also attack this bacteria, and they work together to clear the body of this invader, which is perceived as a threat. You also, I said, for example, when you have a cut, and you get a cut, you're doing something in the kitchen, you get a cut, you go to the doctor, you get a stitch. And what happens now is that the body again increases the blood flow to bring the necessary materials to repair the damage that is caused by that cut. So either one of them, it can be seen as inflammation. So it's a normal response, but when it gets out of control, when it goes on, when it is too high or too long, that is where it causes a problem. It's an important thing to happen.
If I interrupt you a little bit,
Sure.
I'm going back to my childhood days, and I'm
Mhm.
doing this particularly because it is important that people understand what we mean when we say inflammation, as
Mhm.
opposed to thinking it is something else. You know, we have a
Okay.
way sometimes of describing something um, in a particular way that may
Mhm.
exclude other elements. So as a child, I got a cut, I'm running around the yard, maybe in the bushes, and I got dogged by a prickle or something to that effect. I don't give attention to it. And after a while, it swells. There is redness, it swells, and it gathers what we generally locally would call pus. And then my mother would come and squeeze it out and says it has inflammation, and she squeezes it out. So that some people are left thinking that the inflammation is the pus that is squeezed out. And I want to make sure we understand that inflammation is a response, is more than the result of the work that the body is doing. So if you could clarify that a little so that people don't get the wrong impression.
Okay. Thank you, Pastor. So so inflammation is the response, and the response results in different things, right? So if it's a localized response, what you'd see is the area would get swollen, and if you have light skin, then you'd see it get also red. It would also get tender. It would get warm, and that's because of all the activity that is taking place in that area. Because when you get a puncture, let us say you get a thorn in your flesh, that thorn is a foreign body, and the body is going to try to contain it because it is seen as a threat. So you have all these red white blood cells coming out of the blood, going to attack this foreign body that is there. There's also going to be some bacteria, because this thorn will have some bacteria on it. There would have been bacteria on your skin as well, which has gotten a chance to get into your skin. So the body is just trying to get rid of this threat. No, so that is that is a localized infection. So the whole process that is taking place, the swelling, the redness, the tenderness, the warmth, are all signs that the body is responding to that foreign body, right? But you also have inflammation that can develop if let's just say that you have a cold. So a virus has invaded your body, right? And your body is responding to that virus. The body produces substances to fight the virus, and these substances can cause various symptoms. So you have things like the mucus being produced. You have an excess amount of mucus being produced. You have mucus being produced in your upper airway, causing runny nose, in your lower airway, causing coughing as well. You may also have a fever all over the body, because again, the substances that are produced to fight the infection can cause a fever. It also causes you to lose your appetite. You will also feel weak. You'll have pains all over. You'll have a headache. All of those things that are happening are signs of inflammation. But you can have a localized process, like if you should get a cut or a boil, or it can be all over the body, which can result in things like fever and headaches and all of those things. So that is an acute situation. But if you are eating the wrong things, your body can also react to the food to the unhealthy foods that you're eating with an inflammatory response, but it is not as dramatic as an infection, right? But because it's going over a long period of time, it can cause damage over time. And you may have some of those, you may have some of those symptoms as well. You may notice some effect on your appetite. You may get joint pains, but not as much. You may get headaches, you may get back pains. And you can get damage to certain areas like your joints and so on over time. And that is why it's important to try to limit the inflammation being produced by your activities, so that it doesn't really cause that damage, over time. So it's not just infections and injuries, but even the very food that you're having can cause it as well.
Now you also mentioned that, as an example, I believe you said if an individual have colloids, that could be an indication that the healing process is being impacted somewhere or the other. So that I'm sensing that a lot of people are walking around the place with what you call maybe a systemic low-grade inflammation, and they're not aware.
Yes. The thing is, this is, of course, keloids. There are different factors that will influence the development. Some persons have a genetic predisposition to getting keloids, but the genes it's like a gun. Inflammation, pulls the trigger. So the potential is there, but the inflammation is what actually causes it to manifest itself. And when these things happen, then, so sometimes things are taking place inside your body that you're not really aware of. That is why sometimes you may find a person may suddenly get a heart attack or a stroke. it may look like a sudden thing, but inflammation is what would have set you up for that to happen. That will actually take years. Inflammation causes damage to your blood vessels, for example. And then what happens is that inflammation also causes the clot to form, and then it lodges somewhere that is occluded, causing a heart attack or causing a stroke. And that is when that may be the first obvious sign that the person was having inflammation going on. You understand? So yes, there are a lot of persons out there with a high level of inflammation and they're not aware of it.
So this subject that we're discussing is more important than I thought, because it seems to me as though inflammation is responsible for a whole lot of things.
Yes.
Well, in that case, can you therefore tell us of some of the diseases that are associated with this chronic or systemic inflammation?
Okay. All right. So you have in the diseases. So the so-called lifestyle diseases are caused by inflammation. So things like diabetes, and I've explained to you how that happens in diabetes, hypertension as well. High cholesterol is also caused by inflammation. Even having on excessive weight is actually a product of inflammation, because inflammation causes your body to go into a fat storage mode, right? So even that, things like thyroid problems, persons with fibroids, men who have prostate problems, enlarged prostate, heart disease, which is what results from inflammation, causes damage to the blood vessels that supply the heart muscle. What happens is that the inflammation damages the lining of your blood vessels, causes the cholesterol to get into the walls of the blood vessels, causing them to swell, not causing narrowing of the blood vessels. It also damages the lining, so that oftentimes, again, inflammation can cause an increased risk of clots to form inside of your blood. So you have clots actually form. And then when you have these clots that are caused by inflammation, and then this clot is moving through your blood vessel, and it gets to a point where it is too narrow to pass, it blocks the blood vessel, causing occlusion of the blood supply. So the blood supply gets cut off from that area, and that area of the heart muscle dies, or that area of the brain dies. So all these diseases can be caused. Other thing to make note of is even our susceptibility, so the likelihood of us getting infections like colds and so on, they may be a result of underlying inflammation as well, because inflammation also can cause the immune system to overreact to certain things, right? So it may overreact to, let us say, COVID, right? When COVID was well, even though what happens is that when persons who have high levels of inflammation, when they get the COVID infection, the body overreacts to the COVID. So it's not the COVID virus that actually kills you, right? It is your body's immune reaction to the virus. The damage that is caused by the body's immune reaction to the virus that actually kills you. The virus doesn't kill everybody, as you well know. There are some persons who get the virus, and because their immune system does not overreact to the virus, they may survive. Sometimes they may not even have symptoms. So the likelihood of you having symptoms and complications from infection is also affected by the level of ongoing that chronic inflammation that is really going on. So both short-term and long-term problems are affected by the level of inflammation inside of your body.
So is this a matter of genetics in terms of people's reaction, or is it a matter of lifestyle?
Well, it's both. It's both, because you do find that some persons may be more prone to having long-term inflammation. And I want to kind of touch on a potentially sensitive topic. If we are following the news, if you even follow current health news, we realize that us as people of color, you notice that they would have said that they are more prone to getting the complications of COVID infection. You may also know that we are more likely to have complications of cancer. Also, the lifestyle diseases like diabetes and hypertension. You may notice that we, as people of color, may be more prone to those diseases and those complications. And a part of it has to do with how our bodies react to those things. Our bodies tend to overreact a bit more. And of course, as to the reason why that is, we can speculate about it. It could be because of us not being in the environment in which we would have originally come from, not eating the food that we normally used to. So our bodies would probably be more likely to hold on to certain nutrients. And so when you get excessive nutrients, your body tends to overreact to those nutrients, causing inflammation. So there are certain factors that may cause you to be more prone to get it. Some of it has to do with individual genetics. Some of it has to do with your race. Some of it has to do with your food that you're eating. So there are a lot of different factors. And of course, each person will have to look into themselves and see what are the factors that are more likely to cause it. There might be environmental factors as well that may cause it. So stress levels, there are a whole lot of things. Chemicals that you're exposed to, even the temperature, the environmental temperature can actually affect how your body responds to these things. So there are many different factors. And of course, it's important for us to look at our situation and see what is affecting us and what we need to do about it.
Very well. Now, I did a little browsing of the internet. These days, lots of information are available on the internet. So I decided to ask Google what kinds of food causes chronic inflammation. And here's a list of what it says. It says red meat, such as steak and hamburgers, processed meat, such as bologna, bacon, sausage, and luncheon meat, commercial baked goods, such as snack cakes, pies, cookies, brownies. Then it says a bread and pasta made with white flour, deep fried items, such as French fries, fried chicken, and donuts. Foods high in added sugar, such as candy, jelly, and syrup. Sugar-sweetened beverages, such as soda, bottled or canned tea drinks, and sport drinks. And trans fats found in margarine, microwave popcorn, refrigerated biscuits and doughs, and non-dairy coffee creamers. Now, this is a very interesting list. I would say, I was going to say impressive, but I prefer to say interesting list. And I'm alarmed by some of the items that are here. Now, red meat and processed meats are no surprise, but can you still say, we will deal with the rest of the items in a little while, but can you say why red meat, although I'm saying it's not a surprise to see it there, can you still comment on why red and processed meats are on this list? Why are they right at the top of the list as causing or contributing to inflammation in the body?
Okay. All right. So there are a number of reasons, and this is a big topic. All right. So it stated some examples of foods. We want to look at principles. So how can you know whether this food is, so we don't want to look at just list, but look at the principle, how you can know. So let us look at meats. Meats have a number of things that cause the inflammation to be high. Number one, the nutrients that are, meats is a nutrient dense food, right? So it has a lot of nutrients, and it's a calorie dense food. And foods like that, they are absorbed into your body fairly quickly. So foods that are absorbed into your body quickly, they tend to trigger inflammation. The faster a particular food is absorbed into your system, because the absorption of food triggers inflammation, always, right, always triggers inflammation, producing what we call free radicals. The foods that are absorbed more quickly, more free radicals are produced, and so therefore they cause more damage. So that is one. Number two, is that uh, um, they have an effect on your intestinal bacteria, as I mentioned before, right? So because of that, it has a delayed effect as well, right? It has a delayed effect. So that also causes it. Also, the type of fats that you have, they are called long chain fats, the ones that are, very big. When you look at a molecular level, they are very big. So that also, so animal fats, as you know, will trigger a lot of inflammation in your system. And these are some of the reasons why you find that foods will do that. Now, when you compare that with, for example, a plant-based protein, so for example, peas and beans, there are a number of differences. Number one, there's a lot of fiber that is in the plant-based proteins, like the nuts and seeds and so on. So they're absorbed more slowly into your system. So there's less free radicals. And the fruits and the peas and beans also having antioxidants that control inflammation as well. One more thing about the animal-based foods is that the makeup of the proteins, the building blocks of the proteins of animal-based proteins also tend to produce more inflammation when they absorb into your system than the ones that make up the plant-based proteins. So these are some of the reasons. So number one, it's absorbed into your body quickly. The building blocks of the animal-based proteins will trigger more inflammation. The fats also will do it. And the effect that they have on the intestinal bacteria promote inflammation as well. Processed foods will have another issue. For example, sausage and bacon and so on, they actually have unhealthy substances added to them. They do have some of the healthy substances that are in the animal-based products removed, and you have unhealthy substances added. So that makes it even worse. So for example, having processed beef, let us say beef sausage is worse than having beef itself, right? Because good things are taken out, bad things are put in, which affects the immune response.
So, Doc, yeah, a couple of things there. I was going to interrupt you, but I decided to let you finish your trend of thought because you were talking about the long chain. Um, uh, when you were relating to the vegetable versus the meat, and you were given a difference between. So I wanted you to just go that over again in the event that somebody missed it. And secondly, I want to explore a little bit more about the fact that processed meats have some healthy things removed from them and some harmful things added to them.
Okay. All right. So proteins, a protein is like a house, right? And proteins are made up of building blocks, just like a house. And you have different types of blocks that are used, just like in a house, different types of blocks that are used in the house. And when the protein when the meat goes into your stomach and in your intestines, it is broken down back to those individual blocks. Those blocks are then absorbed into your system, and your body uses them to do repairs and so on, and to make things. But what you find is that the effect of some of these blocks are different from each other. So one might have a greater effect on inflammation than another. What they have found is that the ones that make up animal-based proteins are somewhat different from the ones that make up plant-based proteins. What you find is that the ones that come from the animal-based proteins, they tend to trigger more inflammation in your system than the ones that come from plant-based proteins. I'm not sure if that is correct.
I'm hearing you on that, yes.
Right. No, no. In terms of the fat that is on the meat also triggers inflammation. There's fat that is in meat and there's fat in plant-based foods. But the fat that you find in meats triggers more inflammation than the fat that you find in animals. So that's a different thing, right? That's a different thing as well. Was there another question?
Yes, you did indicate that. Well, before that, other question.
Yeah.
Is it that well, from the Bible, we know that the original diet was
Right.
plant-based.
Right.
So I'm assuming that has something to do with it.
Yes, because the thing is, as I said, these foods, the plant-based foods, there are a number of differences with a plant-based food as opposed to an animal-based food. Number when we spoke about the amino acid, the building block component, that is one. The other thing is that plant-based foods will contain more fiber. Fiber slows down the absorption of nutrients when they are being absorbed into your body. So they're absorbed more slowly. And this has a number of effects. There's less inflammation that is being produced, right, as a result of that. And you also find that that the fiber also can have a beneficial effect on your intestinal bacteria that will also reduce the inflammation. You also find that plant-based foods contain more antioxidants. The antioxidants help to control inflammation. An example of an antioxidant would be the color that you find in carrots. So that the orange color of the carrot is an anti-inflammatory nutrient. And that also helps to control the inflammation because as I said, when the food is being absorbed, harmful substances are produced in that process called free radicals. And these free radicals, they cause damage inside of your body. So when you have a plant-based food, there are a number of benefits that it has. Slow absorption, there's antioxidants, there's also what we call essential oils, healthy fats that are in the animal-based foods that also have a different effect of controlling inflammation
You said healthy fats in the animal-based food. Did you mean to say
in the plant-based foods.
Okay, all right.
In the plant-based foods.
Yeah, so the next question was,
Mm.
you mentioned that the beef, for example, is eating beef maybe better than eating the processed luncheon meat.
Right.
Because
So you do find, even though animal-based foods are generally unhealthy, they do have some healthy things in them, right? For example, you do have some amount of healthy fats that are in meats, right? But the problem is there's not much, but there's still some there. So those healthy substances that are in the meats can by themselves have a positive effect, but because of the overall issue, overall effect that it has, it turns out not to be beneficial but harmful. But can you imagine you then take this beef and the little helpful things that are in it are then removed, right? Which will counteract some of the effect of the negative, and then harmful substances are added. So you have colorings, for example, that are added. You have preservatives that are added, but the preservatives will preserve the food, but it won't preserve you. You understand?
okay.
Those preservatives will actually harm your body, especially again in your intestines, because these preservatives, how they work is that they affect the growth of bacteria. Now let's think about this now. That sounds like a good idea. But when you put those into your colon, which has healthy bacteria, which are important for the health of your body, they can actually have a negative effect on the healthy bacteria that you have in your system and can promote the growth of harmful ones, right? So these substances actually, those foods, and which is why it's well known that processed foods can increase the risk of cancer and other diseases. As a matter of fact, it can increase the risk of cancer by almost 20%. So that's why they have that kind of harmful effect.
So one should always be concerned about how their food impacts the bacterial balance in the intestine. That's
Exactly.
kind of what I hear you saying.
Yes, definitely.
Mhm.
Definitely. And what happens is your food is not supposed to feed you alone. Your food needs to also feed your bacteria, right? So you need to have foods that you cannot totally digest, right? You cannot totally digest those foods. Proteins are mostly digested, most of the nutrients are broken and absorbed. The problem is what is left over. Sometimes you have food that are left over, which are not digested properly inside of your colon, the meats I'm talking about, and they go into your large intestine and they ferment and can actually promote the growth of unhealthy bacteria, right? So that's why you want to limit your intake of meat. On the other hand, plant-based foods like peas and beans, nuts and seeds, they contain fiber. The fiber, your body does not absorb the fiber, but the fiber is food for the healthy bacteria. Now, when your body does not have enough fiber, what happens is that it causes a different set of, because these bacteria have to be fed. So you find that you find bacteria growing in your intestines that are more efficient at absorbing nutrients for themselves. But these bacteria are usually those that promote inflammation, right? So when there is a restriction in what is left over from your small intestine going into your colon, then what you find is that the bacteria that are promoted are the ones that promote inflammation. Let me give an example. Cactus. Cactus and those, there are some plants that only grow in areas or tend to grow in areas that you have reduced amount of water,
Yes.
right? Um, like, cactus and so on. If you notice that these things, they have prickles on them,
Yes.
right? So you don't want too much of those things growing around you, especially if you have children,
Hmm.
right? No, that's what happens when we don't give enough food to the healthy bacteria. It promotes the growth of these harmful bacteria that harm our bodies as well. So you want to give it a lot of fiber to feed the healthy bacteria, and these bacteria, the healthy ones, will keep your inflammation down.
So I don't know if I followed you completely there. I want to make sure I'm not getting a misunderstanding here. What you want remaining from the digestive process is fiber. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes,
Okay. So sometimes if I eat a lot of meat, I may have remaining stuff that is not fiber, and that creates challenges in the colon.
that's right. That is right.
I don't know if this just popped into my head, but I heard, and we may, you may want to say that's for another time, but I've come across this term called leaky gut.
Yes,
So I'm thinking that an individual may have a situation or a condition that causes him or her not to be able to properly digest his food or to absorb the nutrients. And so more of the food is remaining to go into the colon than ordinarily would be. This is just my crude way of putting it. So would that aid to some kind of inflammatory process?
all right, so that is another big topic. But let me just clarify something. The term leaky gut, when a person thinks of leaky gut, they think of things leaking from your intestines into the passage of the intestines, but it's actually the other way around, right? In
Mhm.
leaky gut, what you have is things going into your intestines that are not supposed to, right? So you have a barrier. There are a number of barriers that exist in your colon to keep harmful things out of it, right?
Mhm.
And when you have inflammation inside your colon, it breaks down those barriers. So there are connections between the cells that keep mucus that lines your colon that also keeps harmful things out. And there's also bacteria. So the mucus keeps the bacteria some distance away from the wall of your intestines, right? So when you have a situation where the mucus layer is broken down, it breaks down that barrier, the bacteria gets closer to the wall. These bacteria can produce harmful substances that damage the barriers, the protection, and then you find harmful substances getting into your intestines, into your bloodstream. And then what happens sometimes is that these substances, they attach themselves to certain substances that are in your blood, right? Forming a different substance. The immune system reacts to that substance and produces inflammation. So what happens is that these substances get into your body, they react to certain substances in your body, they go to certain areas, like for example, your liver, attach themselves to the liver. The immune system now comes and sees that as a foreign body, attacks the substance, and also damages your liver in the process, right? Also, you find that you may have illnesses like autoimmune conditions developing, where these substances, they may attach themselves to different places inside the body. Your body attacks those sites and cause damage. So it can affect your joints, for example. It can affect your blood vessels. It can affect your liver. It can affect different places. So for example, a condition like lupus, right? This is what can happen in a case of lupus, where the body's immune system is attacking the body cells because of these foreign substances being on those organs, being attacked by the immune system because it sees it as a foreign body.
Okay.
So that's what happens in leaky gut syndrome.
Okay, and I'm sorry for taking you off of the topic really, but let's get back to this list of foods that cause inflammation. So we spoke about red meat and processed meats, but then there is also what I gather from the list here is that sugar and sugary things are culprits, right? So can you talk about sugar and inflammation for a bit?
Okay, so sugar also can produce inflammation. And the thing is, the reason for that is sugar is normally broken down fairly easily. So if you have sugar as an additive to your food, right, as an additive to your food, it is normally in concentrated amounts. It's broken down easily. It gets absorbed into the system and it triggers that inflammatory process, what we call the free radicals that we spoke about earlier. So that is why sugar can cause that. The thing is, there are some foods that are broken down to sugar very quickly as well and can have the same effect. Flour is one of them. Also, some type of starch. So for example, Irish potato. Irish potato doesn't have much fiber in it. So you find that the foods that don't have much fiber in them are also absorbed quickly. Flour is one. Pumpkin is one as well. Irish potato is one. Dasheen also. Cassava. These foods don't have much fiber in them. They are plant-based foods, but they are not healthy plant-based foods. So because of how little fiber there is in it, it's absorbed very quickly. It sends up your blood sugar, and that sends up your inflammation and causes damage in your body.
Now, I want to think that our listeners or viewers are alarmed as much as I am by the inclusion of pumpkin and cassava. This is, I generally hear that these are, what do they say, complex carbohydrates. and complex carbohydrates are better than the refined carbohydrates. But I hear you saying that these don't have much fiber. Um, Somebody may say, well, I eat the pumpkin with the skin. I suppose that may be useful, but just expand a little bit more on that.
Okay, all right. So foods that contain sugar that also contain fiber are not as bad. So for example, prunes has a lot of soluble fiber. And let me just explain a little bit more about fiber. So you have different types of fiber. Two main types, you have soluble and insoluble. Soluble fiber, you can mix out in water. Insoluble fiber doesn't mix out in water. So for example, if you should be having vegetables and vegetables actually give you both of them, soluble and insoluble fiber. So if you have wheat bran is an example of an insoluble fiber. So if you mix out wheat bran in water, it doesn't mix out, right? The insoluble fiber, like the wheat bran, it gives bulk to your stools. It's not absorbed. It's not broken down. The soluble fiber holds onto the water and also serves as food for the bacteria. So when you have foods that have a lot of soluble fiber, they help to slow down the absorption of the food. That is why when you're having foods, you should not take out the fiber from out of it, because the fiber keeps the sugar from spiking in your blood, right? You also have some starches that have more connections with each other, which with itself inside of the starch itself. You have more connections. So, for example, if you have one person holding one of your hands, it's as opposed to two persons holding two hands. When two persons are holding you, you are stronger than one.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it is harder for somebody to take you and carry you away. You understand? In a complex fiber, you have more of those connections within the starch itself. So that's what you call a complex starch. So an example of complex starch would be grown provision. So things like yam, for example, is a complex starch because it has these complex connections inside. You also have fiber that is in it separately and apart from the connections. So there's a fiber that slows down the absorption as well. So sweet potato, even though sweet potato contains sugar, because it contains more fiber than the Irish potato, it actually spikes your blood sugar less than the Irish potato. You understand? So the complex starch would be like the yam, green banana, sweet potato. Those are the starches that are healthy. The ones that like the pumpkin, the Irish potato, the white rice, the cassava, as I mentioned, there's not much fiber in them. There's not much soluble fiber, especially in them. So there's nothing to slow down the absorption of these nutrients. And one thing that you can use to tell as to whether a starch is healthy or not is the glycemic index. The glycemic index, which is something you can look for online. So the glycemic index is a measure of how much a particular food will spike your blood sugar. So the glycemic index goes from 100, from 0 to 100. If the glycemic index is over 70, that is high. From 0 to 55, that is low. From 55 to 70 is medium. So the foods that we recommend are those low glycemic index or medium. The ones that are high, it's not healthy. So let us give us some examples now. Pumpkin. The glycemic index of pumpkin is about 76. For cassava is about, I think it's about 90, close to 100. So 100 is when it is like glucose.
Okay.
The glycemic index of glucose is 100 because glucose doesn't need any breaking down at all. It goes straight into your bloodstream, which is not really good, by the way. All right. So pumpkin is about 86. Dasheen is about 86. White rice is about 73. Flour is about 73 as well. As opposed to green banana is about 40. Yam is about 45. Prunes, even though prunes is sweet, the glycemic index of prunes is about 30 because of the fiber content, right? Sweet potato is about 45 as well, right? So, so the glycemic index is a good way to check your carbs to see if they're healthy or not.
And you're saying that somebody can go online and search what is the glycemic index of dates?
Yes.
Okay.
Or you can use artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, Meta, and that.
Yes. Okay, very well. Well, our time is going. We have about 3 more minutes to wrap this up. We will come back with part 2, but I wanted to ask you about so you spoke about sugar, but I noticed here that bread and pasta that are baked with white flour is in the list of things that contribute to inflammation. So we're talking about white flour here. We're talking about white flour, and some folks may not know that pasta is, a lot of it is from white flour. So why does white flour contribute to inflammation?
All right, so there are a number of reasons. And I want to include also whole wheat flour, right? And I'll explain why. Flour, wheat flour, whether whole wheat or white, it's not as healthy as most people think. There are a number of reasons for that. Number one, the white flour doesn't really have much fiber in it. So that is one problem. But there's another problem with wheat products. Wheat products also contain gluten. Gluten is a protein that is in the wheat that triggers inflammation. Gluten is good to hold things together. So that is why white bread holds together better than brown bread. But the gluten triggers inflammation. So there are at least two things in the bread that triggers inflammation. One, it's absorbed quickly, it's broken down quickly. And number two, the gluten, right? Now, if you look at the glycemic index of whole wheat bread, it's about 68, 69, 70 thereabouts. As opposed to white bread, it's about 72, 73. So the glycemic index of whole wheat bread is not much different. This is the commercial one, by the way. You do have certain types that are lower than that. So you have to, so the commercial whole wheat bread, usually the glycemic index is pretty high, but you do have some that are much lower, that have healthier wheat. So that is why wheat, the thing about pasta tends to have a lower glycemic index than bread, right? And I think because of the density of it, but pasta doesn't really have that much, it's not, the glycemic index is medium, right? It's medium. So it's not that high, but still we should limit the amount because of the gluten that is in it, and it should not be something that you have frequently.
This is a lot of information, but our time is up, so we're gonna have to cut it off here. In part 3, we will continue this very meaningful discussion. I want to thank you, Doc, for sharing. We are dealing here with some very heavy stuff. And yeah, there are lots of questions. We probably will just have to do responding directly to all the questions that have been asked in a separate broadcast. So for those of you who have been asking questions, bear with us. We want to get through the information, and we will come back for another session in the future with responses. So keep your questions coming in the chat. We will check them out and we will respond in a separate broadcast. That's all the time we have for today. Until next week, same time, may God's richest blessings be yours.